You know that phrase, money doesn't buy happiness? Well, whoever invented that clearly never had to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying food. But there's a detail nobody mentions. Money doesn't bring peace of mind either, especially when you have so much that you start thinking everyone is trying to screw you over. Welcome to the wonderful world of ultra-rich paranoia, where having $1 billion comes with the bonus of chronic insomnia and an irrational fear that the Amazon delivery person is actually a Russian spy. Let's get straight to the point. In the United States, we live in a culture where everyone wants to be rich. It's the American dream, baby. Work hard, make the right choices, and one day you'll have that mansion in Beverly Hills with an infinity pool and an 8-car garage. But nobody talks about how when you finally get there, you don't relax by the pool. You're staring at the security cameras, thinking the gardener is planning something sinister with the lawnmower. The average American is afraid of burglars. That's normal. They lock their doors, have a basic alarm system, maybe a dog that barks when the mailman arrives. But the American billionaire? That guy is on another level. That guy has a security team trained by former CIA agents, a facial recognition system that identifies threats within a 3-block radius, and an underground bunker that would make the Pentagon envious. And it's not a B-movie bunker. It's a bunker with a climate-controlled wine cellar, a 4K cinema, organic hydroponics, and enough space for the whole family to live for 5 years without seeing the sunlight. And look at the irony. The guy who built an empire selling other people's privacy now spends millions protecting his own. The CEO of a social network that profits from your personal data uses a triple VPN, an encrypted cell phone, and hasn't posted a family photo since 2015. The oil tycoon who denied climate change for decades now has a floating house ready for when Miami sinks. The lack of self-awareness is so great you can see it from space. Here in the U.S., we have an unhealthy relationship with success. If you're rich, you're automatically respected. It doesn't matter how you got rich. You might have inherited everything. You might have stepped over 1,000 employees. You might have evaded taxes in a tax haven. If you have a private jet, you have respect. And along with that respect comes the paralyzing fear of losing everything. Because deep down, in the dark corner of their soul, billionaires know that the difference between them and the guy who lives under a bridge is just timing and luck. But admitting that is impossible. So the narrative becomes, I'm a genius, I deserved it, and now everyone wants to destroy what I built. There are businessmen out there who conduct loyalty tests with employees. Like, they send someone to offer a bribe just to see if the person accepts. There are CEOs who recorded secret meetings to later review them and check body language looking for signs of betrayal. There are billionaires who changed personal assistants 15 times in 2 years because they thought they were all leaking information to the press. Spoiler alert, nobody was. The press doesn't even care that much about you, my dear, but paranoia doesn't respond to logic, and technology has made everything worse. Now, it's not just the fear of physical robbery. It's the fear of hackers, data leaks, deepfakes, Bitcoin disappearing, and the government tracking offshore transactions. The billionaire of 1980 had to worry about kidnapping and paparazzi. The billionaire of 2026 has to worry about that, plus ransomware, cancel culture, cryptocurrency regulation, and a 16-year-old in Romania who could destroy his empire with 3 lines of code. Oh, and there's the issue of taxes. In the United States, the rich hate taxes, with a passion usually reserved for sports rivalries. A guy earns in 1 month what an average worker doesn't earn in 10 lifetimes. But the idea of paying 30% to the government? Absurd. Communism. Institutionalized theft. So he hires a battalion of tax lawyers, opens shell companies in the Cayman Islands, declares tax residency in Monaco, all to pay the minimum possible. And then he doesn't understand why the country's infrastructure is falling apart and everyone is pissed at him. But back to the paranoia. There are billionaires who only drink bottled water that they themselves saw being sealed. There are billionaires who travel with a personal chef because they're afraid of poisoning. There are billionaires who don't take the same route to work 2 days in a row, deliberately varying their route to make ambushes more difficult. And before you think, but that's reasonable, remember that the statistical chance of an American billionaire being poisoned is less than the chance of them dying falling off a $15,000 treadmill. New Zealand has become an obsession. Half of Silicon Valley's elite holds New Zealand citizenship as an escape plan. Why? Because when the revolution begins, when the people get tired, when the bomb falls, New Zealand will be there, isolated at the end of the world, safe. So the guy buys a 1,000-hectare farm near Queenstown, builds a self-sustaining complex, stockpiles weapons and food for a decade, and waits for the collapse that justifies the investment. Meanwhile, the average New Zealander just wants to live life without understanding why crazy Americans are buying up half the country. And luxury bunkers are a whole other story. There's a specialized company that converts Cold War missile silos into high-end underground condominiums. 15 floors below, 75 units, swimming pool, tennis court, library, school. All underground. The marketing is brilliant. When the world ends, you'll live better than you did before. And there's a waiting list. A waiting list to live in a hole in the ground that costs $5 million, only in America. What nobody talks about is that all this paranoia is a symptom. When you accumulate wealth equivalent to the GDP of a small country, when inequality is so obscene that one person has more money than the bottom 50% of the population combined, it's obvious you're going to become neurotic, because deep down, muffled by helicopters and yachts, there's a voice whispering, "This isn't right. This isn't sustainable." Sooner or later, the bill will come due. And instead of doing something constructive like redistributing wealth or paying fair wages, the person buries their anxiety under more security and more isolation. There are billionaire families who stage kidnapping simulations with their children. They hire security companies to enact abductions, teach survival techniques, and practice negotiation with kidnappers. The children grow up believing that the world is hostile by definition, that every stranger is a potential threat, and that trust is weakness. And then we wonder why these people have such a lack of empathy. And get this, statistically, an American billionaire is more likely to die from an accidental overdose of Ambien mixed with wine than from kidnapping. They're more likely to crash their Gulfstream into a hill because the pilot was tired than from a home invasion. But try explaining that to the guy who just installed a defense system that detects hostile drones. He doesn't want to hear statistics. He wants to feel like he's in control. The American middle class applauds all of this because they think that one day it will be them. It's the dream. Every suburban kid selling lemonade on the sidewalk is convinced he's going to be the next Bezos. And when he gets there, he'll also want a bunker and an armed crew. So instead of questioning the system that allows such absurd accumulation, we romanticize it. We watch Shark Tank and root for the billionaire to get even richer. It's economic Stockholm syndrome. And then there's the issue of employees. Billionaires can't trust anyone who works for them because deep down, they know they pay poorly. You earn $20 an hour cleaning a $50 million mansion while the boss spends that much on a bottle of wine at dinner. Obviously, resentment will arise. Obviously, loyalty will be conditional. But instead of paying better, the billionaire installs more cameras, does more background checks, puts in more confidentiality clauses. He treats the symptom, ignores the disease. And when the media criticizes, fake news. When activists protest, chaos funded by Soros. When politicians propose taxation, Venezuelan socialism. Everything becomes a conspiracy theory, because admitting that maybe, just maybe, accumulating a 12-figure fortune while an employee depends on food stamps is morally problematic. It hurts the ego too much. The tech billionaire is even worse. This guy read Ayn Rand in college, thought he was profound, and now lives in a Randian delusion where he's Atlas holding the world on his shoulders. He truly believes that without him, civilization would crumble, that he's essential, that society should be on its knees thanking him for the privilege of using his app. The lack of humility is so monumental it distorts the gravitational field. And they buy media, newspapers, social networks, film studios, not out of love for journalism or entertainment, but for narrative control. Because if you control the information, you control how the story tells your life. You become a visionary hero instead of an economic parasite. You become a misunderstood genius instead of a lucky person who was in the right place. Scientific research shows that after a certain level of wealth, happiness no longer increases. In fact, anxiety increases. Because more money means more responsibility, more decisions, more people depending on you, more exposure, more risk. And the human brain didn't evolve to handle that level of complexity. We evolved to live in groups of 150 people hunting mammoths, not to manage a multinational empire of 50,000 employees while trying to hide money from 3 different governments. So the guy develops a defense mechanism: isolation, distrust, paranoia. It becomes normal. It becomes part of the routine. Waking up, checking for security threats, drinking imported coffee, encrypted video meetings, lunch with tested food, more. Meetings, dinner with family where everyone signs an NDA before talking about their day, sleeping with a biometric weapon on the nightstand. Dream life. And the funny thing is that deep down, in the most hidden corner of his psyche, the paranoid billionaire knows that the greatest threat doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. It comes from the system he helped create and perpetuate. It comes from unsustainable inequality. It comes from accumulated resentment. It comes from the ticking social time bomb. But recognizing this would require change. And change means losing control. And losing control is unacceptable. So he builds a higher wall. He hires more security. He buys more property in a remote country. He invests in surveillance technology, all to postpone the inevitable, all to maintain the illusion that he is special, that he deserves it, that when everything falls apart, he will be protected while the rest of humanity fends for itself. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to hear. When the system truly collapses, bunkers won't save anyone. Because society is an interconnected organism. When one part dies, the rest continues. You might have 5 years' worth of food stored, but then what? Why would you climb out of the bunker? To rule a wasteland? To be king of ashes? Congratulations, you survived. Now you're the richest person in the apocalypse. That must be very rewarding. The inconvenient truth is that the paranoia of the ultra-rich is an involuntary confession. It's a tacit admission that they know it's wrong, that the obscene concentration of wealth generates instability, that exploitation has limits, that eventually the rope will break. They know. That's why the fear. That's why the obsessive preparation. That's why the progressive isolation. Meanwhile, the average American, with $30,000 of student debt and 0 on their 401k, continues to defend the system, continues to vote against their own interests, continues to believe that one day they will be at the top of the pyramid, because the American dream is a powerful drug, more addictive than fentanyl, more destructive too. Ultimately, the biggest joke is this. The billionaire has everything money can buy except peace. He sleeps in 1,000-thread-count sheets, but sleeps poorly. He eats food from Michelin-starred chefs, but fears poisoning. He travels the world, but always looking over his shoulder. He has absolute financial freedom, but lives trapped in his own paranoia. Meanwhile, the guy who earns minimum wage, lives in a rented apartment and drives an old car, at least when he lays his head on the pillow, he doesn't think the whole world is conspiring against him. At least he sleeps, And at the end of the day, a good night's sleep is worth more than any amount of zeros in the bank account. But make no mistake, if you wake up a billionaire tomorrow, you'll do exactly the same thing. Because the problem isn't individual, it's systemic, it's cultural, it's structural. As long as we value accumulation over distribution, wealth over well-being, individual success over collective success, the paranoia will continue. It will grow. It will consume. And when you see in the news that yet another billionaire has bought a private island or built a luxury bunker, don't laugh. Don't criticize. Understand it for what it is: fear. Pure, distilled, concentrated fear. Fear that one day the bill will come due. Fear that justice, even if delayed, will eventually appear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, they aren't so special after all. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy the courage to face the truth.